I called my parents 9 times from a hospital bed. My mother let every one of them ring out because my sister needed help moving her dining room table into a new apartment 12 miles away. I was 41 years old. I was in the cardiac care unit of Mercy General in Columbus, Ohio, with a blood pressure cuff on my arm and a monitor counting my heartbeat, and a doctor, who had used the phrase "we caught it in time" in a tone of voice that made very clear how narrow that margin was. I run a financial planning firm. I spend my days helping people protect what they've spent their lives building, making sure their children are covered, their assets documented, their futures arranged so that the people they love are taken care of no matter what happens. The irony is not lost on me that I had done this for strangers for 13 years and had never, not once, done it with myself in mind. I lay in that hospital room, and I watched my phone go unanswered call by unanswered call, and I understood something about myself that I had been avoiding for a very long time. I had been everyone's plan. I had never been anyone's priority. So the next morning, I picked up my phone, not to call my parents. I was done calling my parents, and I called my attorney. And by the time they finally walked through that door, what I had done in that hospital bed was already witnessed, notarized, and filed. Welcome back to Sweet Payback Stories. If you have ever been the one nobody worried about because you were too capable to seem like you needed anything, this one is going to hit close. No shouting, no drama, just a woman, a hospital bed, and the paperwork that finally told the truth. Subscribe and drop a comment with where you're listening from. This story has a moment near the end that I still think about every single day. Let's go back. My name is Mae Caldwell. I am 41 years old. I am a certified financial planner and the founder of Caldwell Advisory Group in Columbus, Ohio, which has 12 employees and serves about 230 clients, most of whom are families who have either built something worth protecting or lost something they didn't protect in time. I started the firm at 28 with a rented desk, a laptop that had a hinge problem, and a list of 20 potential clients I had assembled from 3 years of networking lunches and professional referrals. 13 years later, I have a real office with real furniture and a client list that has grown almost entirely by word of mouth, which is the only kind of growth I have ever trusted. I am precise. I am methodical. I am, as my mother has told me my entire adult life, the responsible one. That phrase, the responsible one, has been operating as both compliment and sentence my whole life, and I did not fully understand that until I was lying in a cardiac care unit watching 9 phone calls go unanswered and thinking, with surprising clarity for someone who might be dying, about how much money I had quietly been funneling into people who had decided I was too responsible to need anything from them. Let me tell you who my family is. My mother, Gloria Caldwell, is 65. She is warm and social and funny in the way that makes people love her immediately and trust her instinctively, and she has the specific genius of certain women of making every room feel like she organized it. She is generous with her energy and her affection and her time, selectively, in the way that selective generosity works, which is to say she pours herself into the people she has decided need her most, and she has decided, with such thoroughness and consistency, that it has become simply reality, that I am not one of them. She says this with love. I want you to understand that. She does not withhold from me out of malice. She withholds because she made a decision about me early and it became her permanent operating assumption. Mae handles things. That is the decision. Mae handles things, and because Mae handles things, Mae is fine, and because Mae is fine, Mae does not require the attention that goes to the people who aren't fine. My father, Gerald, is 67, retired from 30 years in utilities management, a quiet man whose primary mode is agreement. He agrees with my mother about what's for dinner and where to vacation and which grandchild needs more encouragement and the exact level of concern that is appropriate for any given situation. In 4 to 5 years of marriage, he has not once, to my knowledge, looked at a situation his wife had already assessed and decided she was wrong. My sister Penny is 36. Penny is not irresponsible. I want to be fair about that. She is genuinely warm. She loves her kids fiercely. She works hard in the specific chaotic way of someone who has 3 children under 8 and a husband named Todd who travels 4 days a week for his sales job. She is also the person in our family around whom everything orbits, not because she demands it exactly, but because she exists at a frequency of visible need that my mother responds to reflexively and completely. Penny's Penny's needs are legible. When she struggles, you can see it. When she is overwhelmed, she says so. When she needs help, she calls and the help arrives, because the visible need triggers the response the way a smoke alarm triggers the sprinklers. My needs have never been legible in this family. Not because I hid them. I am not a particularly private person, but because I wore competence like armor for so long that my family stopped looking at me to see how I was doing and just assumed the answer was fine. And I had let that happen. I want to own that clearly, because this story requires honesty. I had let it happen, because being useful to this family had become, somewhere along the way, the closest thing to belonging that I knew how to reach. Here is what they did not fully know about the architecture I had quietly built around them. My parents lived in a condominium community in Dublin, Ohio, a nice one, the kind with a maintained exterior and a common area and a management company that handles the things retired people don't want to handle. The monthly fee was $1,400. My parents' retirement income covered $800 of it. I had been covering the remaining $600 automatically every first of the month for 3 years. I had set up the transfer the month after my mother mentioned, once, at Thanksgiving, that they were finding the fee harder to manage than they'd expected. She mentioned it once. I set up the transfer and never mentioned it again, because that is what the responsible one does, solves problems cleanly and without requiring recognition. Penny's family had needed a new roof 2 springs ago. The estimate was $14,000. Penny and Todd didn't have it. My mother called me on a Saturday morning and explained the situation and said they had no idea what they were going to do. I had the funds wired by Monday. No loan agreement, no repayment schedule, just the transfer and a text from my mother saying you are a lifesaver, May, truly. Lifesaver, not daughter. I had a life insurance policy, a substantial one, the kind you maintain when you run a business and want to make sure your obligations are covered if the worst happens. My parents were the primary beneficiaries. My mother knew this. She knew it in the specific way she knew all financial information I gave her, gratefully and briefly, because dwelling on it would require thinking about my eventual death, and she preferred not to do that. 3 weeks before the hospital, I had paid for Penny's kids' summer camp. $4,000. Penny had mentioned she wasn't sure they could swing it this year. I had put it on the firm's card and written it off as a personal expense and not said anything to anyone, because the camp was good and the kids were going to have a wonderful time and I could afford it, and that was enough reason. That is who I was. That is the structure I had been building for 13 years. And not one person in my family had ever once asked how I was. Not how is the business, though they occasionally asked that. Not how are you sleeping, or how is your back that has been bothering you since the merger last fall. Or what do you actually want, May, when you're not solving everyone else's problems? Just, you're fine, you're always fine, you're the responsible one. I had bought that narrative so completely that when I started having the symptoms, the fatigue that I told myself was overwork, the occasional tightness in my chest that I told myself was stress, the morning headaches I told myself were dehydration, I did the responsible thing, which was to dismiss them all and continue running my firm and paying my family's bills and being fine. I saw my doctor in March. She took my blood pressure, which was elevated. She ordered tests. She told me to slow down, which I noted and set aside. The event happened on a Tuesday morning in April. I was at my desk reviewing a client's estate transfer when I felt my left arm go wrong. Not painful exactly, but wrong, the specific wrongness of a body trying to tell you something important before you've been trained to listen. I felt cold and then very hot, and then my chest compressed, and I thought with the strange clarity of a person whose brain is doing its best, I am not going to be able to finish this review today. My assistant Rachel found me with my face on the desk. She was on the phone with 911 before I had finished telling her I was fine. I was not fine. I had not been fine for a long time. I had just been very good at scheduling around it. The cardiac care unit at Mercy General smells like antiseptic and forced air and the specific institutional neutrality of a place that is designed to be nobody's home. I had been there for 4 hours before I reached for my phone. 4 hours, because the first 4 hours had been the kind of organized medical urgency that does not leave room for personal phone calls. Tests, imaging, a cardiologist with a careful face and a measured voice who explained to me that what I had experienced was a hypertensive crisis. My blood pressure had spiked to a level that had briefly interrupted blood flow in a way that was serious and that had left me, he said plainly, in a position that required close monitoring for the next 48 hours. He said we had caught it in time, with the the emphasis of someone who wanted me to understand how specific that in time was. When he left and the room settled into the particular hush of machines doing their steady work, I reached for my phone. My mother first. 4 rings. Voicemail. Her recorded voice, the warm one she has used since 2015. Cheerful, brisk. Leave me a message and I'll get right back to you. I left a message. I kept it short because short felt like the right volume for a person with a blood pressure cuff on their arm and a monitor showing their heart rate. Mom, it's me. I'm in the cardiac care unit at Mercy General. They said it was a hypertensive crisis. I'm stable, but it's serious. Please call me back. I hung up and looked at the ceiling and told myself she was in the car, or in the garden, or had left her phone on the kitchen counter the way she sometimes does. 10 minutes by the monitor clock. I called my father. 4 rings. His voicemail, slow and careful, the voice of a man who approaches technology the way he approaches most things, patiently, deliberately, without particular urgency. Same message, shorter, because my second wind at delivering this information was already thinner than the first. I gave it another 10 minutes. Then I called my mother again. 4 rings. Then my father. 4 rings. I want to tell you that after the 4th call I felt afraid. But the honest thing is that after the 4th call I felt something else, something that lived underneath the fear and was colder and more structural. I had been here before, not in a hospital, but in the specific experience of needing my family and finding the line going unanswered. The particular math of being the one who handles things, which means being the one who can be counted on, which means being the one who is never the emergency, because emergencies happen to people who need things, and I had been performing not needing things for so long that the performance had become the expectation, and the expectation had become the policy. After the 6th call, I stopped leaving messages. There was nothing left to say that I hadn't already said, and hearing my own voice, careful, controlled even while frightened, still managing the delivery of difficult information for the comfort of the recipient, was making something in me very tired. I opened the family group chat. I don't know why I did this. Perhaps I wanted confirmation that they were simply unreachable, somewhere without signal, somewhere reasonable. Perhaps I wanted to find a version of this that made sense. What I found was the opposite of sense. My mother was active, not offline, not traveling, not in a place without service. Active, posting, in real time. A photograph of a kitchen table being maneuvered through a narrow doorway. Todd and my father on either end. My mother and Penny in the background laughing. A picture of Penny's new apartment living room. Boxes stacked. 3 children in a pile on a blanket in the corner. A string of heart emojis from my mother. A caption, helping our girl get settled. Family makes everything work. So blessed. Our girl, getting settled. So blessed. I lay in the cardiac care unit at Mercy General, with a blood pressure cuff on my arm, and I read those words on a screen, and I understood something I had been telling myself I didn't know for a very long time. It was not that they didn't see the calls. It was that they had looked at my name on the screen and decided, in the way you decide something you've decided so many times it no longer feels like a decision, that whatever May needed could wait. May handled things. May was fine. May was the responsible one. And responsible people do not call from hospital beds. They call about other people's hospital beds. They had looked at my name and put the phone back in their pocket, and gone back to carrying a table. I set my phone face down on the tray beside me. I want to pause here, because I know some of you listening have felt this specific thing. Not just the not being called back, but the particular texture of it. The realization that you've spent years being available, and that availability has been received not as love, but as infrastructure. You are the road they drive on. You are the building they work inside. And roads and buildings do not call from hospitals. If that's you, tell me in the comments the name of the person who would drop everything and come. Just one name. Tag them in your heart right now. I'll be right back. My phone buzzed while I was looking at the ceiling. My heart did the thing hearts do, the old reflex, the one that hasn't gotten the message yet, and for half a second I thought, Mom. It was a text from Penny. She had seen the message I'd put in the group chat 3 hours earlier, the one I'd typed while still in the waiting area, before I'd been moved upstairs. The message that said I'm at Mercy General, cardiac unit, hypertensive crisis, serious. She had read it. This is what Penny sent. Oh no, but sounds like you're in good hands. Rest up, heart eyes, a little red heart with eyes. While her sister was possibly having a cardiovascular event. I read it twice. I waited for the follow-up message, the one that said said, wait, the cardiac unit. Or how bad is it? Should I come? It never came. My sister had decided that good hands meant other people's hands, and that other people's hands were a solution that released her from any obligation to use her own. I put the phone face down again. I looked at the monitor, counting my heartbeat. Steady, unimpressed, doing its job regardless of whether anyone was watching. There was one more call I hadn't made. My brother-in-law Todd has a younger brother named Sam. Sam is 33 and teaches at a community college in Westerville and has no particular reason to be the person I call from a hospital bed. We are friendly but not close. We see each other at holidays. He asks real questions when we talk and actually listens to the answers, which is a rarer quality in a person than it should be. I did not call Sam. What I did was think about what was coming. Not the medical thing. I had physicians for that and they were competent and present and I had no reason to doubt them. What was coming after the medical thing? The conversation, the family, the moment when my mother arrived. Not now, but eventually, because eventually she would come, and I knew how that conversation would go. She would be warm. She would bring flowers from the hospital gift shop. She would kiss my forehead and say, "Oh, sweetheart, you scared us." She would say, "But you're fine, aren't you? You're always fine." And then, within the breath after that, she would find the angle where her absence became a reasonable thing, where 9 calls became a misunderstanding, where a daughter in a cardiac unit became something that would have been impractical to interrupt a move for. She would do it with love, with genuine warmth, with the specific skill of a woman who has been reframing things her way for 65 years and has never once been made to account for the reframe. Unless the thing that had already happened could not be reframed. I had been a financial planner for 13 years. I knew better than most people how thoroughly a single document could close a door. I knew that the difference between a wish and a reality was often just the presence or absence of a signature and a witness. I reached for my phone again, not to call my mother, to call my attorney. Daniel Cho has been my attorney since the 2nd year of the firm. He drew up the company's operating documents and 3 years ago my estate planning, my will, my beneficiary designations, the documents that describe what happens to everything I've built if I am no longer here to build it. He answered on the 2nd ring. I told him where I was. I told him the medical situation. I told him about the 9 calls and the group chat and the heart emoji. I told him calmly, because I am always calm on the phone. It is a professional habit that has become involuntary at this point. And I told him what I wanted to do. Silence on the line, the thoughtful kind. Then Daniel asked me the question that told me why I had trusted him with the important things for 11 years. He said, "May, I'll do whatever you ask me to do, but I have to ask you first, are you sure this is a decision you're making, or a wound you're feeling? Because in my experience those can look exactly the same from a hospital bed. And I don't want to spend the morning undoing something you'd undo yourself in a week." I appreciated that question. I would have been disappointed if he hadn't asked it. I gave him the answer I had. "Daniel," I said, "I have spent 13 years making financial decisions for people in difficult circumstances. I have sat across from people in grief, in fear, in the aftermath of a diagnosis, and I have helped them make decisions they needed to make clearly and correctly. I know what a wound feels like and I know what a decision feels like and I know the difference. This is a decision. The wound is what made me capable of it." A pause. Then, "I'll be there in an hour. Don't sign anything until I'm in the room." He arrived in 53 minutes, which tells you something about Daniel. Before he arrived, I did the thing I had learned to do in 13 years of estate planning. I protected the decision. The most predictable challenge to any legal document signed in a medical setting is the question of capacity. Was she in her right mind? Was she medicated? Was she under duress? These questions, raised after the fact by people who don't like what the document says, are the standard last resort of the person who was counting on a different outcome. I was not going to leave that door open. I asked to speak with my attending physician, a woman named Dr. Anita Mehta, who had been direct with me from the first night in the specific way of a competent physician who respects patients enough to tell them the truth. I explained what I intended to do. I explained why. I asked her, plainly, whether she could document in my chart that I was alert, oriented, lucid, and in her medical judgment fully capable of making my own legal and financial decisions. She looked at me for a long moment, the look of one careful, competent woman to another. Then she said yes. She said my labs were stable, my cognition was clear, and that she could note her assessment of my capacity in my chart, and would be willing to witness the signing. I thanked her and she left, and I lay in the bed and made a list. I am a financial planner. Lists are how I think, how I make things real, how I move something from intention to record. The list had 4 items. First, the life insurance beneficiary designation. My parents were currently listed as primary beneficiaries on a policy with a face value significant enough to matter. The kind of policy designed to make sure the people who depended on me were covered if something happened. Changing the beneficiary was a form I could sign. Daniel would have it. Second, my will. The current version left everything to my parents, with my sister as the secondary beneficiary. I wanted it rewritten. Third, the automatic transfer. $600, first of every month, to the condominium community management company. My parents did not know this payment came from me. They had never asked where the $600 difference between their income and their fee was covered. I had never told them. I was going to stop the transfer. Fourth, Penny's roof fund. I had given $14,000 2 years ago with no documentation, no repayment agreement, nothing in writing. There was nothing to undo there, but I was writing it down, for the record, so that the record existed. Daniel arrived. He set his briefcase on the foot of the bed and laid the documents on the rolling tray table. Dr. Mehta stood on one side of the bed. My night nurse, a steady woman named Gwen, who had a long braid and the specific unshakable calm of someone who has seen the full range of what humans do in difficult rooms, stood on the other. Daniel walked me through each document. I read each one. I understood each one. Then I signed my name 4 times with my own hand, steady, unhurried. Dr. Mehta and Gwen witnessed each signature. Daniel notarized each page. It took 22 minutes. When the last signature was dry, Daniel put the documents back in his briefcase, with the care of a man who understands that what he is holding is important. He would file the beneficiary change with the insurance company. He would file the updated will with the probate court. The transfer cancellation would process by morning. At the door, he paused and looked back at me. He said, "It's done. It's clean. Nobody's undoing this, May." Then he left. The room went quiet. Just me and the monitor and the machines doing their steady, faithful work. For the first time in days, I felt like myself. Not the version of myself that managed things for other people. The version that managed things for herself. I was still in that bed. I was still being monitored. I still had a cardiologist coming in the morning to talk about next steps. But the architecture of my life had been correctly drawn, finally, to match the actual structure of the people in it. And no one was going to come into my room and talk me out of it, because the paper said what it said and the witnesses said what they said, and it was done. I turned off my phone. I went to sleep. The next morning, I turned my phone back on. 37 notifications. I did not look at them. I called Rachel at the office first. She had known where I was since the ambulance. She had handled the day's client calls and rescheduled the meetings and sent a firm-wide note that said I was dealing with a health matter, and that all client inquiries would be addressed as normal. Rachel has been with me since the firm's 3rd year, and she is the kind of person who solves the problem in front of her without waiting to be told. She asked how I was. She asked what I needed. She asked if there was anything she should not do. I told her I was okay. I told her the situation was serious but manageable. I told her she was doing exactly the right things. After I hung up, I lay there thinking about the difference between that phone call and the 9 I had made the night before. Rachel had answered on the first ring. Rachel had asked what I needed. I had been giving my family unconditional access to my resources for 13 years, and I had found out in 9 phone calls exactly how much of that flowed in the other direction. And I had given Rachel a salary and professional respect and the dignity of being trusted with real work, and she had shown up, not even physically, just in the way she picked up the phone and meant it, more completely than anyone with my blood in their veins. I thought about this for a long time. My phone showed 37 notifications, and I finally looked at them. 22 were from the family group chat, picked up overnight while I was asleep. Photos of the finished apartment, a picture of Penny's kids on an air mattress, a message from my mother, all settled, pizza night with our girl, best day, another photo, more heart emojis, 22 messages, over 12 hours. not a single one that contained my name. 12 notifications were missed calls, 3 from my mother, starting at 7 that morning, 2 from my father, 4 from Penny, 2 from Todd, 1 from Dennis, who had never called me outside of a holiday. Dennis, whose existence I primarily registered as the person who stood next to Penny in photographs. Dennis was calling. I knew what had happened before I checked the bank notification. The automatic transfer had been set to process at midnight. My parents' condominium fee for the coming month, the $600 that had been leaving my account on the first of every month for 3 years, had not left my account, which meant a letter had not yet gone out, but somewhere, someone had noticed that the amount that usually appeared had not appeared. Actually, I realized, I had made a business decision that was documented. Daniel would be filing the change of beneficiary with my insurance company this morning. If my parents happened to be the kind of people who checked the insurance portal, my mother received the quarterly statements. She had mentioned this once. She might already know. I lay there and listened to the notifications and felt, for the first time since the ambulance, genuinely curious about what happened next. My father called at 8:15. Not my mother, my father. I answered. His voice was different from the one I had last heard telling a voicemail machine that he'd call back. It was smaller, the voice of a man who had been somewhere with what he'd done for a night and come out the other side changed by it. May, he said, are you there? I said yes. Honey, a long pause. Penny got your messages from the group chat. From the day before yesterday. She called me last night. I said, okay. I checked my phone when we got home. His voice went rough. I had 3 calls from you. I didn't. Your mother said it was probably nothing, that you'd call if it was really serious. He stopped. I said, it was really serious, Dad. His breath came out in a sound I had never heard from my father. Something between a sigh and a cry and the specific exhale of a man who has been holding something terrible in his chest for 12 hours. I know, he said. Penny told us how serious. I'm so sorry, May. I had the phone in my pocket. I felt it ring. He couldn't finish that sentence. I let the silence be what it was. I'm coming this morning, he said. I'm coming whether your mother does or not. I need to see you. I said that was fine. After we hung up, I called the one person I should have called first. The way you should always call the person you actually trust first, and then work outward from there. My college roommate Annette, who lives 3 miles from Mercy General, who had known me since we were 20 and who had, when I'd sent her a brief text from the ambulance bay, because I thought I should tell someone, texted back within 4 minutes, which hospital, I'm coming. I had told her not to. I had told her I was fine. She had come anyway. She was asleep in the recliner by the window when I woke up that second morning. Her coat still on, a half-drunk coffee on the ledge beside her. She had shown up at 11 the night before and the nurses had let her in, because she had told them she was my emergency contact, which was not technically accurate at the time, but was the truest possible description of what she was. She woke up when I moved. She looked at me and said, how are you doing? Not how are you feeling? How are you doing? The bigger question. I said, I think I'm okay. She said, good. And then, I saw the group chat. When I got here last night, 40-something messages about a finished apartment. I said, yeah. She held my eyes for a moment. She said, what did you do? And I told her, all of it. The list, the 4 items, Daniel's briefcase on the foot of the bed, Gwen and Dr. Meta on either side. 22 minutes. The last signature drying on a tray table. Annette listened. When I finished, she said one thing. Good. Not, are you sure? Not, that seems harsh. Just, good. That single word from someone who actually knew me was worth more than the entire group chat. My father arrived at 10:15. He came in alone, his good jacket, his face doing the quiet devastation of a man who had understood something overnight that he could not undo. He crossed straight to the bed. He took my hand in both of his. He said, I should have answered. 3 words. The simplest true thing. I said, yes. He sat down. He did not let go of my hand. He stayed. They came at 11:30. My father was already there. Annette had gone to get coffee and stayed near the door. My mother came in first, the way my mother always comes into a room, fully, immediately present, the center of gravity assembling itself around her arrival. She carried flowers from the hospital gift shop. She kissed my forehead. Her voice was warm and immediate. Oh, sweetheart, look at you. You gave us such a scare. But you're here. You're the tough one, May. I knew you'd be all right. There it was. You're the tough one. I knew you'd be all right. Delivered over a gift shop bouquet. 2 days late, in front of witnesses. She set the flowers on the tray table, the exact space where I had signed my name 2 nights ago, and moved to sit in the chair beside the bed with the efficiency of a woman ready to take charge of the situation. Then Penny came in. Then Todd. They stood near the door, which told me they had been briefed by Dennis about the transfer, which meant they were not here only for me. My mother settled in the chair. She adjusted her posture. She said, "Now, Penny tells me there's some confusion about some bank accounts, about transfers, and that sort of thing. I'm sure it's all just a mix-up. Some automatic thing that went wrong while you were here. We'll just sort it out, Anne." "Mom," I said. She stopped. "Before we talk about anything financial, I want to tell you something." She waited. "I called you 9 times, I said. From this room, from this bed. I left you messages that said I was in the cardiac care unit at Mercy General, and that it was serious. The doctor told me we caught it in time. And she said it in a way that made very clear how close that margin was." My mother's mouth opened slightly. "You were active on the group chat the entire time. I saw the photos, the dining room table, the kids on the air mattress, the pizza." I kept my voice level. "Your name was at the top of the chat for 12 straight hours. My name wasn't in it once." The room was very quiet. "I'm not telling you this to wound you," I said. "I'm telling you because you're about to ask me about transfers and accounts. And I want everyone in this room to understand the context in which those decisions were made." My mother had stopped performing. The warmth was still on her face, but it had gone motionless, like a screen that had frozen mid-image. I reached over and moved the flowers off the tray table. Then I nodded to Daniel, who stepped forward from the corner. I had asked him to come back this morning, and he had, and laid a small stack of papers on the cleared space. 2 nights ago, I said, with my physician and my night nurse as witnesses, I made some changes to my estate documents. I looked at the room. My mother, Penny, Todd, my father with his eyes on the floor, Annette by the door. My life insurance beneficiaries have been updated. My will has been rewritten. The automatic monthly transfer that has been covering the $600 gap in your condo fees for the past 3 years has been cancelled as of this morning. And I have documented, for the record, the $14,000 that went toward Penny's roof 2 years ago. A silence. Todd cleared his throat. Penny said, "May, I'm not finished," I said. I looked at my mother. "I have been paying for things in this family quietly for 13 years, I said. "I didn't do it to be acknowledged. I did it because I could and because being useful felt close enough to being chosen. But 2 nights ago, I lay in this room, and called you 9 times, and watched you post photos of a dining room table, and something finally became clear to me that I think I've been trying not to see." I held her eyes. "You didn't come, because you had decided, a long time ago, that I didn't need you to, that I was capable, that I was the responsible one, that responsible people don't have emergencies that require dropping everything. So you made a decision for me, that my call could wait, and you made it from a conviction about who I am that you built 30 years ago, and never updated." My mother's chin came up. Her voice came out with an edge that told me she had found the angle she was going to fight from. "We had no idea it was so serious, May. If you had been clearer in the messages." I used the words intensive care and serious, I said. "I'm a financial planner. I know how to communicate important information clearly. We were in the middle of. I know what you were in the middle of." The edge in my own voice surprised me. I let it be there. "You were in the middle of a dining room table and a pizza," I said. "And I was in the middle of a blood pressure event that the cardiologist said we caught in time. Those are not equivalent situations. And I think you know they're not." Daniel, who had been standing beside the tray table with the patience of a man who has watched many rooms arrive at this exact moment, said what he was there to say. He said all the documents had been signed with witnesses. That my physician had documented my capacity. That the designations and the will and the cancellation were all valid and filed and there were no grounds to contest any of it. My mother looked at the papers. She looked at Daniel. She looked at my father, who was still looking at the floor. "Gerald," she said. My father looked up. His face had the look of a man who had been deciding something since the night before and had arrived. He said, "She's right, Gloria." 2 words from a man who had spent 4 to 5 years agreeing with his wife. My mother stared at him. He said, "She called 9 times. I felt the phone in my pocket. You told me not to worry about it. And I listened to you instead of my own daughter." The room held that. He looked at me. He said, "That's not going to happen again. I can promise you that even if I can't fix the rest." My mother made a sound that was not quite a word. Then she looked at the flowers I had moved off the tray table, sitting now at the edge of the windowsill, and she said nothing. Penny had been quiet through all of it. She said now, in a small voice, "The roof money, you never said it was from you." "No," I said, "I thought it was insurance." "It wasn't." She absorbed that. "And the camp last month?" she said. I nodded. She put her hand over her mouth. I looked at my sister. Genuinely warm, genuinely overwhelmed, genuinely, I believed this, genuinely unaware of how much invisible weight I had been carrying on behalf of the people she loved and who loved her. I said, "I'm not doing this to punish you, Penny. I'm doing it because invisible support stops being a gift when it starts being an expectation. And I don't want to be infrastructure anymore. I want to be your sister." She cried. Real tears. Not the kind that come from being caught. The kind that come from understanding something that's been true for a long time, and finally having someone say it out loud. "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't know." "I know," I said. "That's what I needed to change." I went home 8 days later. Annette drove me. She had come every day. She brought real food and kept the nurses company, and told me exactly what she thought about everything, which is what she has been doing since we were 20, and which is one of the primary reasons I am still standing. My father came every day also. He sat in the chair, the hard vinyl one, the one that leaves impressions on the backs of your knees if you sit in it too long, and he read his newspaper, and didn't talk unless I wanted to talk. On the 4th day, he told me that he had called the cardiologist's office from the lobby and asked if there were things he should know about my condition and my recovery. He had taken notes. I don't know why that undid me more than anything else. My father, 67 years old, sitting in a hospital lobby with a notepad, asking a cardiologist's intake coordinator what his daughter needed. He was choosing to know. He was choosing to update the information he held about me. My mother came twice. Both times with flowers from a real florist, not the gift shop. Both times she sat in the chair for 4 to 5 minutes, and talked and then hugged me and left. She did not mention the estate documents. She did not mention the transfer. On the second visit she said, unprompted, in the middle of a sentence about something else entirely. I should have answered. She said it looking at the window. Not at me. I don't think she could look at me when she said it. But she said it. 4 words. The truth, delivered sideways, in the way of a woman who is not built for plain apology, and has done the closest thing she can manage. I accepted it. Not as enough, but as a beginning. Because 65 years of a habit does not become irrelevant in 8 days, but it becomes something to build from if both people are willing to try. I had one conversation with Penny before I left the hospital. We were alone. She had come on the 5th day by herself, without Todd, which told me she had thought about what she wanted to say. She said, "I want to know when something is from you. I don't want the invisible thing anymore. I'd rather know and feel the weight of it than not know and just take it like it's nothing." I said, "That's exactly what I needed you to say." She said, "The camp. I'm going to pay you back for the camp." I said, "It's not about the money, Penny." She said, "I know. But I want to. Not because you need it. Because I want to be the kind of sister who does. I said okay. She hugged me for a long time in the way of a person who understands they are making up for something they didn't know they owed. I did not restore everything. I want to be honest about that. The life insurance beneficiaries stayed changed. I had named Annette and a scholarship fund I had been meaning to set up at my alma mater, a fund for first-generation financial planning students, the kind of students who are going to go into this field and help people the way I was helped when I was starting out and didn't know what I didn't know. That felt right. That felt like my actual values, finally expressed in the actual document. The will I revised. Not back to the original, not my parents as primary, not Penny as secondary, as if the last 2 weeks had not happened. But I rewrote it to reflect the people who had actually shown up, which included my father and Annette, and, conditionally, my mother, conditional on the work the relationship would require, which was not a legal standard but was an honest one. The monthly transfer I kept cancelled. I called my parents' condominium management company and I explained the situation plainly and I offered to set up a payment plan with my parents directly, not an automatic transfer from my account without their knowledge, but a real conversation between adults in which the actual financial situation was visible to everyone. My parents were uncomfortable with that conversation. It required them to look at their own numbers and ask for help explicitly, which was different from being helped invisibly, and invisibility had been part of the comfort. We had the conversation anyway. It was awkward and imprecise, and my mother said 3 things she had to take back and my father apologized twice for no specific reason, which is how my father apologizes, and we worked out an arrangement. Not the same arrangement. A real one. With words and acknowledgement, and my name attached to it. The firm is fine. Rachel kept things steady while I was out and sent me a card signed by all 12 employees, which I keep on my desk. I took 3 weeks to recover properly, which is 3 times longer than I would have taken before the hospital, and I felt the difference. I see my cardiologist regularly. I take the medication. I have a word I am learning to practice, a 2-letter word that the responsible one is not trained for, but that turns out to be available to her if she decides she wants it. No. That's the word. No, I can't take that call today. No, I can't solve that this week. No, this needs to wait. No, I'm going to rest now. It is the hardest word I have ever learned and also the most useful. My father calls on Sundays. Not my mother, my father, specifically, has started calling on Sunday afternoons. He asks how I'm doing. He waits for the real answer. Sometimes we talk for an hour. Sometimes 15 minutes. He always ends the call the same way, the same 4 words, and I think he is going to say them for the rest of his life, because they are the thing he understands he owed me for a very long time. He says, I love you, May. Not you're fine. Not you're the tough one. Not you'll handle it. Just, I love you. And I say it back. Here is what I know now. I had been building other people's security for 13 years and calling it love. And love was part of it. I want to be honest about that, it was never only calculation. But some part of the giving had always been the hope that the giving would be seen. That if I contributed enough and solved enough and funded enough, the people who had decided I was fine would eventually look up and notice I wasn't always fine. They never looked up. And in a cardiac care unit on the 2nd night, I finally understood that looking up was never going to happen, because the giving had made it too comfortable not to. You cannot make yourself indispensable, and then hope someone will notice you're a person. The indispensability obscures the person. That's just the math of it. So I stopped making myself indispensable. I stopped and I rebuilt. And what I rebuilt was smaller and more honest and pointed entirely at the people who had been in the room when being in the room cost something. The documents are filed. The signatures are witnessed. The record says what I mean now, finally, after 41 years of saying something slightly different. The monitor is gone from my arm. But I still hear it sometimes, that steady, counting beep, and I think about what it was counting. Not just beats per minute. The specific currency of a life, measured out second by second, going somewhere. I decided, in a hospital bed on a Tuesday night in April, that mine was going to go somewhere that actually deserved it. I have not regretted it for one single day. That's my story. 9 calls. A tray table. A pen. And the only document that had ever told the complete truth about my life. If you have been the one nobody checked on, because they decided in advance you were fine, you are allowed to stop being that. You are allowed to pick up the phone and call the person, who will answer on the second ring and build from there. Tell me in the comments, who is the one person who would drop everything and come? Just one name. I read every single one. And if today's story gave you something, share it with someone who needs to hear that being strong does not mean being last. Subscribe to Sweet Payback Stories. Every week. No shouting. Just the truth. I'll see you in the next one.